Wax Cat in Hell chapter summary in which Adrien tells Marinette to go fuck herself. Chapter notes: this chapter contains explicit content and non-explicit conversations about NSFW stuff. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Tuesday dawned in a haze of sexual frustration despite the fact that the lingering remnant of Adrien's fingers on her chin had provided her more than enough inspiration to satisfy herself the night before, lack of batteries notwithstanding. 7 in the morning still came far too soon for Marinette's liking, but the fact of the matter was the world didn't revolve around her libido and her suddenly active sex life. There were bills to pay, there were things to do, and by God she had designs to sew. So as much as she would have liked to lounge around in bed, consumed with visions of Adrien in increasingly less clothing, she was a fashion designer first, and a sexually frustrated young woman second. Still, silicone was a poor substitute for actual human contact, and on her way to work, her mind had trouble thinking about anything other than the promise of what was going to happen Saturday. Namely that she was going to have sex with Adrien. Adrien Agreste. One of her oldest friends. Love of her adolescent life. Possibly the sweetest person she ever met. A supermodel. A literal supermodel. She was going to have sex with a supermodel. A literal fucking supermodel. In fact, she wrote fucking supermodel on her calendar at home under the to-do section for Saturday, and most of Sunday as well. Optimism never cost anything. It was like a beacon of hope at the end of a long and probably stressful week, written in bright pink pen so she could see across her desk that, after meeting with fabric suppliers, shopping her designs around to retailers, and finalizing a wedding dress for a client, she could look forward to naked, sweaty, Adrien Agreste at the end. But already Saturday seemed too far away. Unsurprisingly, she found it much harder to work on her projects. It was difficult not to succumb to the persistent, nagging, lustful thoughts that kept creeping into her mind. Her normally efficient fingers suddenly fumbled with stitching and sewing while her mind drifted off into hazy fantasies that she hoped might soon come to life. And all the while the same question buzzed around in her brain like a persistent little fly: what was going to happen? She had more or less put herself at his mercy, a thought that filled her with an electric kind of anticipation that buzzed at the back of her mind as she went about her workday. Her research read porn had filled her mind with a cavalcade of possibilities ranging from the relatively tame to extremes she didn't know if she was willing to go to. But part of her relished the relative secrecy, the fact that she didn't really know what sorts of devious things Adrien was cooking up at that very moment. No, Marcel, it's not about the money, Adrien sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose as he leaned back on the couch. No, it's not about the office size either. Look, let's not make this ugly, okay? I want a clean break from all of this. Yes, I'm serious. Look, Marcel, I'll call you tomorrow. No, I'm not coming in. No, I'm sorry, Marcel. No, good night, Marcel. Adrien tossed his phone down on the couch, flopping backwards with a deep sigh as he stared up at the ceiling. His first day of freedom had been marred with constant emails, phone calls, and well wishes from everyone from Marcel to Marcel's secretary to Leo Parvenu, an old friend of his father's. The calls ranged from begging him to come back, Marcel, letting him know that he'll be missed, Marcel's secretary, a seriously overworked woman who seemed happy that anyone was getting away from her boss, and jokingly asking when the coup to overthrow Marcel will be. Leo. Adrien said nothing to any of them other than the fact that he had no interest in running Gabriel at a corporate level and that he was done with the company for the foreseeable future. He could tell Marcel was disappointed, but at the moment he couldn't bring himself to care all that much. For the first time since he was 13 years old, Adrien didn't need to go to work. For the first time, Adrien didn't have to worry about how he was going to fit into his father's company or how he was going to live up to his father's legacy. Even if he had spent the day lounging around and catching up on his housekeeping, it was something he decided to do on his own, for himself. It was a strange feeling that might have been a happy one were it not for the fact that people from his old life were still trying to drag him back. But he wasn't going back, not after everyone had been so proud that he quit. He wouldn't let them down, not Nino, not Aaliyah, not Marinette. And speaking of Marinette, his lip caught between his teeth as he glanced between his phone and a basket full of crumpled notepads. Adrien didn't fancy himself to be a perfectionist, but if there was anything worth doing perfectly, it was this. The task of planning Saturday's itinerary fell in his lap, and the question of just what he was going to do with her buzzed around in his head throughout the day, lingering as he did his laundry, went grocery shopping, and reorganized his cabinets. If first times were always delicate, then Saturday was doubly so, if only because this was Marinette's first time. Even more daunting was the fact that Adrien had years of fantasy and imagination to live up to, prompting him to throw out a sheet of half-scribbled ideas more than once as he found himself balking under her expectations, even though he had no idea what they were exactly. Which brought him to the call. Adrien glanced at the clock on the wall, tilting his head back and forth as he wondered if he should call her yet. It was almost 6 o'clock, but Adrien of all people knew how workdays could run late, especially for Marinette, who essentially ran her own business, a never-ending source of wonder for Adrien. Laptop open next to him, he attached something to an open email, mouse cursor hovering over the send button for a moment before he decided to call first. After all, he wasn't even completely sure she wanted this to happen anymore. Good night. Marinette called, waving after Sylvie as the front door to her studio shut after them, leaving Marinette alone in her office at the back of the building, mouth full of lace as she tried to put the finishing touches on her latest project. Never one that enjoyed leaving work half finished, Marinette glanced at the clock, figuring she could get the ruffles on her wedding dress stitched before 6. She had lost enough time, mind wandering to visions of Adrien clad in sleek, form-fitting leather. She figured she needed to accomplish something of value before she left for the day. And coincidentally, it was at that moment her phone buzzed. Lace ribbon dangling from her teeth, Marinette stared down at her phone, licking her lips as Adrien's familiar black cat background popped up behind the unread text message. The part of her not focused on her work for the day was hanging on Adrien's promise of a text and a call, wondering what was so important that he wanted to talk about. She let out a small sigh, winding the lace around her mannequin's neck as she unlocked the screen to see what he had said. Adrien, when you have a moment, I'd like to call you. Marinette glanced back at the dress, sighing through her nose as she put her phone down on her desk and made a few quick stitches, enough to let her pick up where she left off tomorrow and enough to make her feel like she had accomplished something for the day. With a small shrug, Marinette sat back in her office chair, picking up her phone and firing back a message. Marinette, whenever you're ready, I'm good. No less than 10 seconds later, her phone buzzed, ringing out Adrien's custom ringtone. She sat up straight, fixing her hair in the reflection of her computer monitor in spite of the fact he wasn't there to see it. She took a deep breath, pressing the answer button on her earpiece and leaning back in her chair. Hello, Marinette said. Hey there, Adrien said. How's it going? Well enough, Marinette said, kicking her heels up on her desk. Still working? Adrien asked. Just finishing some stuff up. I'll probably sleep on the couch in the office tonight, Marinette said, glancing at her dress across the room. That can't be comfortable, Adrien said. You'd be surprised, Marinette said. After months of late nights, I spent an entire weekend trying to find the most comfortable couch in Paris. Were you successful? I definitely found the most comfortably couch in Paris under €300, Marinette said. It's a place to lay my head after a long day's work. So it was a productive day, Adrien said, as Marinette drummed her fingers on the desk. Yep, Marinette said with a small snort. I actually managed to get a lot done today, no thanks to you. Me? Yes, Marinette said, smiling up at the ceiling. I confess you're a very hard person to forget, Mr. Agreste. Well, I'm sorry for the distraction, Adrien chuckled. I'm sure you'll find some way to make it up to me, Marinette murmured. I think I will, Adrien said, a clack of keys echoing on his end. Do you have time to talk now? I wouldn't have answered if I didn't, Marinette said. I'm all alone in my office, so by all means, what did you want to talk about? Well, I guess I just wanted to check in really quick to see if you were still up for Saturday, Adrien said. Oh, Marinette said. I completely understand if things have changed for you or something's come up and you'd rather cancel or postpone it, Adrien said, voice sounding almost unsure on the other end. Nothing's changed for me, Marinette said, a small trickle of fear inching down her spine. Have things changed for you? Not on my end, Adrien said quickly as Marinette breathed a small sigh of relief. Just wanted to be sure. Well, you can be sure that I've been thinking about it quite a bit today, Marinette said with a small smile. If that makes you feel better, have you? Adrien said. Like I said, you're a hard guy to forget, Marinette said, finding it much easier to flirt with Adrien when she didn't have to crane her neck up to talk to him. Well, that's always nice to hear, Adrien stammered as Marinette's smirk widened. Adrien, 0 Marinette, 15 If that's the case, Marinette's brow furrowed as her desktop email notifier pinged, Adrien's name popping up as she opened her browser. I just sent you something, let me know when you get it. This isn't going to give me a virus, is it? Marinette chuckled, downloading the Excel workbook with a click of her mouse. I hope not, Adrien laughed. I just wanted to get 1 or 2 things out of the way before we went any further. I'm guessing this is the limits talk. Marinette asked as the file downloaded. As a policy, I like to know what's on and off limits when I'm planning a playdate, Adrien said. Makes things much easier in my experience. Makes sense, Marinette said, opening the document and scrolling through the Excel list with steadily raising eyebrows. What exactly am I looking at here? Everything, Adrien chuckled. Or at least damn near close to everything a person could possibly be into. And some of the stuff they wouldn't be into by the looks of it, Marinette chuckled. I don't know if you've thought about this stuff yet, Adrien said. But I wanted to make myself available to you, worked on this in case you had any questions. I've thought about it a little bit, Marinette said, wrinkling her nose at 1 or 2 things she saw on the list, squinting at the red X's that appeared in certain columns. What are these X's supposed to mean? Oh, those are my limits, Adrien said after a moment. Doms get limits? Marinette asked. Why wouldn't they? Fair point, Marinette said, glad that so far none of Adrien's X's were on things she had wanted to try. So what do you want me to fill this out or something? If you don't mind, Adrien said. Helps to know what you don't like, and what you do for that matter. So how does this work? Marinette said, biting her lip as her eyes glazed over 1 or 2 things she wanted to try. Marinette said, crossing one leg over the other absent-mindedly as she scrolled through the list. Good to see we have some of the same nose so far. Oh, blood, Marinette said, scowling at her screen. And any other bodily products besides, Do I? Shut up, Marinette chuckled as she went down the list, dropping numbers or X's in the columns as she went. You know what I mean. You'll have to enlighten me later, Adrien laughed. Though for now I'm interested in seeing how our limits don't match up. Not too many spots so far, Marinette said, rubbing her legs together unconsciously as she went down the list, each word or phrase forcing her to consider what Adrien might do to her. Can I go off script a little? By all means, Adrien said. Can I? Marinette said, uncrossing her legs as she leaned into the phone. Can I set specific limits, within limits? You mean limitception? Adrien snorted. Of course, which one are you looking at? Pet names, Marinette said, typing away in the side column as she fought down a hot blush. I'm okay with them so long as they're not super demeaning or anything. Gotcha. I mean, I know I'm a slut, you don't need to remind me, Marinette joked. You haven't had sex in 2 years and you think you're a slut. Oh right, I forgot I was talking to the slut king of Paris, Marinette snickered. Excuse me, Adrien said, just Paris. Sorry, Tomcat slut emperor of France, Italy, and Japan, Marinette chuckled. Thank you, Adrien laughed as Marinette continued to peruse the list. Slut is a title you have to earn. Well, I'm sure you'll give me plenty of opportunities to earn it, Marinette said as Adrien sheepishly chuckled on the other line. I'm happy to pass on my, expertise, Adrien stammered. Adrien, 0 Marinette 30 I'm honored to be learning from the Emperor himself, Marinette said, nostrils flaring as she put an emphatic red X under the watching partner with others row. You weren't thinking of bringing other people into this, were you? No, Adrien said flatly. Why? Oh, no reason, Marinette said, leaning back in her chair. Well, that's a lie actually, I do have a reason. I don't really want to do anything with anyone else present if that's okay. Either in play parties or in public. Of course, Adrien said. I'm not much of an exhibitionist myself. I can see that, Marinette said, hovering over the exhibitionism row, squinting at the row beneath it. Isn't private exhibitionism an oxymoron? Not necessarily, Adrien said. You want to explain it. Exhibitionists typically don't care who sees them, Adrien said as Marinette bit her lip. Private exhibitionists enjoy performing or, just being exposed in front of a select audience, even if it's an audience of one. Marinette asked. Even if it's just me, Adrien murmured, obliterating Marinette's rational thought for a brief moment as she was suddenly struck with an image of Adrien watching her, leaning back in a chair in a shirt and slacks while she sprawled out on the couch, watching him through lidded eyes as she ran a hand down her bare stomach towards her. Adrien, 15 Marinette 30 You going to tell me what you're putting there? Adrien asked, shaking Marinette from her fantasy. You'll see soon enough, Marinette sing-songed, moving down the list. I will tell you I'm rating costumes very highly. Really? Adrien stammered. Adrien, 15 Marinette. Are you surprised that your fashion designing friend has an interest in costumed role-playing? Marinette said, legs rubbing together anxiously. On you or me or both? Adrien asked. Both, Marinette said, a small flutter in her stomach indicating this wasn't as robotic or clinical of a process as she thought it was going to be. Oh really? Adrien said. Anything in particular? Not unless you have a skin-tight leather catsuit lying around somewhere, Marinette chuckled, waiting for Adrien's derisive chuckle to follow. Was all Adrien said. What do you mean Marinette asked. That's something to consider, isn't it? Adrien said simply. Adrien, 30 Marinette, 40 Well, full disclosure, Marinette said, leaning back in her chair as the tingling in her stomach slowly drifted downwards. May or may not have something of a leather kink, or is it fetish? Do you need it to get off? Adrien asked, surprising Marinette with how suddenly direct he seemed. No, Marinette said. Kink, Adrien supplied. Technically speaking, though it's pretty much interchangeable. Nowadays. Marinette said, glancing down at her jeans that suddenly seemed uncomfortably tight. Can I ask what you like about it? Marinette chuckled nervously, scratching her neck. I don't know, like the way it feels on my skin. Like wearing it? Adrien asked. Well, I don't mind wearing it, but Marinette trailed off, wondering if there was a tactful way to put it. Yes? Adrien asked. Let's just say I've ruined a couple of pairs of leather gloves in my time, Marinette murmured. Adrien said after a moment, almost approvingly. You understand? Marinette snorted. Or do you need me to tell you that I sometimes touch myself while wearing leather gloves? I got the message. But thank you for volunteering anyway. Adrien laughed as Marinette's face soon matched the color of her ladybug-themed screensaver. Always nice to have a concrete visual to go on. Adrien, 40 Marinette, 40 enjoying the visual. Marinette said through grit teeth. You pain in the ass. Immensely, Adrien said, the barest hint of a throaty purr coming across the line and almost unbuttoning Marinette's jeans in the process. And speaking of pains in the ass, let me know when you get to the impact play section. Oh my god, you're like so funny. Marinette said in English, putting on her best imitation of a Californian girl she had classes with. Where's the pun box? I'm checking it as a hard limit. You do that, and I might never pun again, Adrien laughed. Yeah, that's looking like a better and better idea, Marinette said, biting a section. Okay, honestly, I have no idea how I feel about any of this. Any of what? The whole smacky, spanky, section, Marinette said. I mean, generally speaking, I know they're all ouchy, but I can't really speak to what I would like or dislike since I've never experienced most of this. That's understandable, Adrien said. Most. Marinette's cheeks flushed, a twitch between her legs begged for her attention. Well, I don't know how much detail you want. As much as you want to give me, Adrien said. But if you've done something before, I'd like to know, especially if it was something you enjoyed. Adrien, game Marinette, 40 fuck, that tone of voice needs to be outlawed, Marinette thought, licking her dry lips. It wasn't as though he was putting on airs or radically changing the way he sounded, just talking in a warm, soft tone that purred out of the back of his throat. The subject matter wasn't doing wonders for Marinette's composure, but something told her Adrien could start reading an encyclopedia entry on radish pickling and she would still be at least half as aroused as she was now. Previous dates have sometimes included light spanking while we're, Marinette trailed off with a small, nervous laugh. Having sex, Adrien said, his smirk practically audible on her end. Yeah, that, Marinette said. And, well, they were some of my better experiences, Marinette said, fingers idly playing with the button on her jeans. Of course, there are some differences between getting lightly smacked on the butt during sex and getting tied up and whipped, aren't there? Some, Adrien admitted, pausing for a moment. Are those differences something you'd like to explore? Marinette's eyes glanced at the ceiling as she leaned back in her chair, imagining the soft touch of a riding crop trailing down her spine and connecting with her bottom in a sharp smack. Adrien's fingers tangled in her hair as she arched into a I think so, Marinette almost whined, placing question marks in nearly every row except spanking. Maybe not all at once, but yeah, I think I'd like that. Okay, Adrien said. And just to be clear, just because you mark something positively doesn't mean it's going to happen on Saturday, or even anytime soon. Already taking charge, are we? Marinette said with a small chuckle. As per your request. I haven't forgotten, Marinette said, brow furrowing as she continued to scroll down the list. Is edging like something to do with knife? Not exactly, Adrien said, almost sighing. It's a fancy way of saying orgasm control. Are you drooling right now? Marinette giggled. Almost, Adrien admitted. It's something of a personal favorite. Really? Marinette said, mentally filing that little tidbit away for future reference. How is not getting off any fun? It isn't, if your only goal is to relieve sexual tension, Adrien continued. Isn't that always the goal of sex? Marinette asked. Getting off and getting on. You know, I'm starting to understand why you don't speak very fondly of your ex-lovers, Adrien said with a small chuckle. Spoiler alert, you don't have a very high hurdle to jump, Marinette snorted, fingers tracing a circle around the button of her jeans. So why would I not want to orgasm? It creates tension, Adrien said. Increases sensitivity. It's a hell of a head trip for me when I'm subbing because the eventual release is always much more intense. Takes some practice and discipline, but it's easier when you have someone else in charge of your orgasms for the night. Removes any temptation you might have to end things early. But that's just me. I see, Marinette said, glancing at the box next to edging. She couldn't deny that the idea of Adrien toying with her, keeping her so close to climax and backing off until he decided to let her come made her want to go home and make furious love to her silicone sweetheart. And speaking of sex, why is sex on here? Marinette said as she skimmed past the paraphilia category and landed on a category simply titled sex. Why wouldn't it be? Adrien asked. I thought these things always built towards a climax of, well, climaxes. Not necessarily, Adrien said. And of course, there are lots of different kinds of sex. Right, Marinette said, idly checking off her preferences as she went down the list. I just thought that yes. Adrien prompted. I thought that we'd be a, you know, Marinette stammered. Have sex. Adrien said as Marinette squirmed in her office chair. So when you say you've been thinking about this all day, you were thinking that we would do, what exactly? You're not good at playing dumb, Marinette hissed through her teeth. Thank you for the compliment, Adrien chuckled. But as you can see, there are quite a lot of things that could be considered sex, so, no kidding, Marinette said, scratching the back of her neck. So I know you said we weren't necessarily going to do everything I mark as okay, but, well, if there's anything that's absolutely mandatory for you, just highlight the row in green or something, Adrien said. Even if it's an entire category. Marinette said, because, I would really like it if sex could be part of our relationship, if you want to, that is. I see, Adrien murmured with a small, approving hum. Before, during, or after? Before, during, or after what? Well, you mentioned that you want all the B, D, S, and M stuff contained in specific scenes. So, I was wondering if you would like us to have sex before, as part of the scene, or after the scene ends. Do I have to pick? When do you ever have to pick with me? Then I guess either one or, all three. Marinette said. At least once a playdate if that's something you want as well. What do you think? Adrien said, a small teasing lilt creeping into his voice. Marinette said, scowling a little. If I have to air my fantasies for your smug satisfaction, you have to do the same, mister. I didn't know my fantasies brought you so much satisfaction, Adrien said without missing a beat, eliciting a small, frustrated sigh from Marinette. But, if I haven't made it abundantly obvious that I want you by now, well, then I am going to make it explicitly clear on Saturday in a way that is going to be impossible to ignore. Oh fuck him, Marinette thought, suppressing a small groan and the urge to ask Adrien to explain what steps he was going to take to make her never forget that he wanted her. Now you're just teasing me, Marinette accused, snorting as she positively marked down phone sex. I am, Adrien admitted. I can stop. I never asked you to, Marinette said, heart hammering in her ears as her fingers hesitantly unbuckled her jeans. But if you keep talking like this, I'm going to need to take 5 to take care of some increasingly pressing business. I didn't realize you were so on edge, Adrien said. Didn't you? Marinette said, continuing to mark limits at an increasingly fast pace as she reached the bottom of the list. You know you were much more manageable when you didn't realize you were insufferably good looking. Don't worry, I'm sure you'll find a way to manage me when the time comes, Adrien all but cackled as Marinette groaned, saving the spreadsheet and attaching it to an email. Tease, Marinette accused. You have no idea, Adrien said, a distant sound of a notification bleeping on his end. Oh, you're done. Yep, Marinette said, tugging her zipper up and down while she waited for his response. A small part of her still lived in fear that he might start laughing at her, while a larger part of herself wondered if she would ever get over that. Interesting, very interesting, Adrien said. You get it. I did, Adrien said. What? Nothing, Adrien said. Just the thrill of discovery. Always interesting to see how a person ticks, you know. You think you know what makes me tick now? Marinette said, biting her lip. Better than I did before, Adrien said. Why do I get the feeling I just outlined my soft spots and gave it to someone who's going to use them against me? Marinette said. Because you just did, Adrien murmured. Wouldn't be doing my job properly if I didn't pay attention to all your softest spots. Marinette closed her eyes, letting out a small frustrated sigh. She didn't want to kick him off the call, but if she didn't do something about the persistent nagging throbbing sensation in her panties, she was going to come undone. Are you okay? Adrien asked after a moment of silence. Fine, Marinette said, idly snapping the waistband of her underwear. Only that this has been a far more stimulating conversation than I anticipated. I usually find that's the case, Adrien said, clearing his throat. Shall I let you go? Unless you'd like to listen to me moaning with my shirt caught between my teeth, Marinette chuckled, frowning as a soft, staticky silence came across the other line. Hey Adrien, sorry, was that a serious offer or were you just kidding? Adrien asked, soft purr in his voice sending a chill down her spine. Marinette stared into space, mouth opening and closing as she processed that yes, Adrien had just offered to have phone sex with her. Well, IW wouldn't want to keep you, Marinette said. I have all the time in the world, Adrien said. Literally unemployed, remember. All right, Marinette said, wishing she had a glass of water or something to quench her sudden thirst. Of course, if you don't want to, you just need to say the word, Adrien said. I didn't say no, Marinette said, heartbeat echoing in her earpiece. You didn't say yes either, Adrien reminded her as she shifted her hips a little. If you want to, Marinette said. If you don't, we can wait until Saturday. I'm more than capable of taking care of myself. I have no doubt that you are, Adrien said as Marinette waited for his response. I still need a yes from you, by the way. Oh my god, Marinette laughed. I am sitting here with my pants half off and you still need me to say yes, don't you? What can I say? Explicit sexual consent is my biggest fetish, Adrien chuckled. So, part of her wondered if she shouldn't just hang up the call and wait until she could properly touch something other than herself. Anxiety tinged her arousal as she wondered if she was even up to what she had asked for. She wanted it, there wasn't any doubt about that. But could she handle it? Would she just dissolve into a mess of nerves the minute she walked through his door on Saturday? But then again, if their first time wasn't their first time? God only knew his soft, husky voice that made her knees weak across town was going to obliterate her unless she got used to it a little. And maybe she needed something to alleviate the tension a little, so the concept of sex they had established that there was going to be sex with Adrien and whatever else came with it didn't completely trip her out so much. She wanted to be relaxed, she wanted to enjoy it. And maybe easing into it was the best thing she could do for herself so she didn't come undone the first time he touched her, as fun as that would be. Okay, Marinette said after a moment. Okay, I would like some verbal assistance if you're willing, Marinette said, letting out a small breath. I'm very willing, Adrien said. I've never done this before, so if you want to take the lead. If you'd like, Adrien said. Cool, Marinette said, popping her lips idly. So, okay, how do people start these things? Oh right, Sue, what are you wearing? Adrien let out a small laugh. Black boxer briefs. And Marinette prompted. Who said there was an and? Adrien said. Good point, Marinette said, slowly sliding her zipper down, an image of Adrien lounging on his couch in tight black underwear suddenly popping into his mind. Do you remember the Gabriel shoot that got banned in most Western countries? Adrien asked, conjuring memories of black and white Adrien emerging from the surf in boxers that were pressed to his skin so tightly that she finally got the answer to a question she had idly wondered about since puberty. One of my favorites, Marinette said, hand slowly slipping down her stomach. Standards and practices weren't as keen on it as I remember, Adrien said. Neither was Da. No offense, but if you're trying to get me off by talking about your father, it isn't working, Marinette laughed. Fair point, Adrien admitted. What about you? Considerably more than you, Marinette chuckled. For now, Adrien said as Marinette's fingertips slowly slipped under the waistband of her panties. What does considerably more than me look like? Plaid button-down blouse, Marinette said, glancing down at herself. Jeans and sneakers pretty casual. Sounds cute, Adrien said. I thought so, Marinette laughed. Must be then, Adrien said. Don't you think you should lose the shoes? Might as well, Marinette said, shucking her sneakers. No one else here but me. Good, take your jeans off too, Adrien said in that low, purring voice that made Marinette acutely aware of how badly she needed to take her jeans off. Pardon, Marinette squeaked. Did I not come through clearly? Adrien said, tapping his earpiece. I said I want you to take your jeans off. Not even Saturday and you're already trying to make me do things. Marinette murmured into her headset. I can't make you do anything, Adrien replied. And not like I have much choice, Marinette said, standing up from her desk. You always have a choice, Adrien said. What if I just pretended to take my pants, I suppose you could do that, Adrien admitted. How would you know sitting all the way across town? Marinette said. I wouldn't, Adrien said. So, why should I do what you say? Marinette said as a small moment of silence greeted her. Because you want to, Adrien said as simply as possible, in a way that brooked no argument because, of course, he was completely right. It didn't matter if Adrien could check on her to see if she had done as he asked or not. The bottom line was there was almost an erotic compulsion that drove her to slide her zipper down, slowly inching her jeans down her hips, past her thighs, and leaving them pooled on the floor at her feet. Despite the fact that she was planning on stripping even if Adrien hadn't offered to help her, the small bit of direction in a soft, firm tone managed to prove the existence of a submissive streak that she had only theorized about until then. Oh okay, Marinette said, bending over and picking up her jeans. Pants off. Lovely, Adrien said as Marinette stood behind her desk, awaiting his next instruction. Was that hard? A little, Marinette admitted. First time letting someone else take charge, you know. I do, Adrien said. And so far you're doing a bang-up job. Thanks, Marinette said, fingers curling in the hem of her blouse. Do you like being told what to do? I think I do, Marinette admitted, voice echoing in the empty office. You think, Adrien said? Maybe we should test that out a little more, what do you want me to do? Marinette asked, bare thighs rubbing together as she fidgeted anxiously. Despite the pressing, persistent ache between her legs, the sound of Adrien's voice in her ear offered the promise of something more than just a quick orgasm. Now let's see, Adrien said, humming a little as though he were pondering a major life decision. Take your blouse off next. Marinette's fingers fumbled with the buttons, slowly peeling her blouse back and tossing it over the chair behind her. Done, Marinette said, a sudden chill passing over her as she stood clad only in her bra, panties, and knee-high socks. That was quick, Adrien said, a small amount of admiration creeping into his voice. Why yeah, well, I'm kind of a few seconds away from dissolving into a wet mess over here, so I figured I should just get on with it, right? Well, let's hope you don't dissolve too quickly, Adrien said. Or at least not until I get my hands on you. Don't worry, Marinette chuckled. No one is more eager for you to get your hands on me than I. We'll see about that, won't we? Adrien said. What are you wearing now? Bra, panties and socks, Marinette said, thumbing the strap of her bra. Nothing exceedingly fancy, pink and blue striped underwear and white socks. Cute, Adrien said. You mentioned you had a couch. You mean my bed for the night? Marinette said, running a hand through her hair. Yes, sad as that is, Adrien said. Have a seat. She padded over to the couch, socked feet skimming across the floor as she double-checked that the door to her office was locked. Satisfied that no one was going to accidentally barge in on her, she padded over to the couch and flopped down seated, Marinette said, reclining back and resting her head on a pillow as she stared at the ceiling. Comfortable? Adrien asked, a rustling sound suggesting he was lying back as well. Marinette replied. Good. You have a hand free. Both actually, Marinette said, tapping her earpiece. Wonders of modern technology. Even better, Adrien said, fingers clacking on his keyboard on the other side of the screen. So, what are you doing? Marinette asked. Going over your list, Adrien said as Marinette's fingers slowly traced a circle around her navel. This has been an extremely educational evening. For both of us, Marinette agreed. Do people seriously enjoy being saran wrapped? I guess. Adrien laughed. Never something that's really appealed to me. Too much muss and fuss, too hard to get off quickly, so what appeals to you then? Marinette asked, tracing the lace on the waistband of her panties. Obviously not saran wrap, I'm more of a cuff kind of person, Adrien said. More flexible. Flexible. Easier to bind and unbind someone, Adrien clarified. As someone who has had to travel quite a bit, I find that all you really need are a pair of wrist cuffs, a pair of ankle cuffs, and a nice padded leather play collar. Marinette let out a small breath, fingers slipping underneath the waistband of her underwear. You've never actually worn one, have you? Adrien murmured in her ear. It's a surprisingly intimate experience. Feeling the leather pressed against your neck, each swallow and gasp causing your throat to rub up against it. Not quite tight enough to be uncomfortable, but just enough to let you feel like you belong to someone. If only for a night. I can imagine, Marinette said. Her hips rose off the couch just a little as she slid a pillow under her bottom, arching into the first brush of her fingers across her clit. I imagine imagining has been all you've been able to do, Adrien said. Fantasies and daydreams and frantic, fumbling fingers as you wonder what it might be like to have someone's complete and undivided attention. What it's like to be played with. Yes, Marinette sighed, closing her eyes and for a moment imagining she was laying on Adrien's couch, knees raised and fingers slowly teasing herself while he watched. Do you want me to play with you? You know I do, Marinette said in a soft, husky voice. Are you going to let me have my way with you on Saturday? Adrien asked. Marinette whined, hips rocking against her fingers as the couch creaked underneath her. What are you going to do with me? Tisk tisk tisk, Adrien laughed. I don't want to spoil the surprise for you. No hints, she said as a small, needy little sigh escaped her lips. Use your imagination, Adrien said. And while you're doing that, you can take that pretty little pink and blue bra off. Marinette shrugged her shoulders, one hand slipping the straps off her shoulders while the other continued to tease breathy pants from her open mouth. After some doing, the fabric fell off her chest, exposing her breasts to the chilly office air as the last rays of sunlight spilled through the skylight across the floor. Done, Marinette said, biting her lip. If anyone walks in, I'm going to die of embarrassment. Well, what about if I walked in? Adrien asked. Still death by humiliation, Marinette chuckled, running her tongue across her lips as she refocused her attempts. She could feel the slick remnants of her desire on her underwear as the back of her hand stretched the front of her thong up and away from her hips. Her fingers slipped in and out of herself, lazily tracing circles around the tip of her clit as she began to settle into a familiar pattern. I'm not exactly dignified over here, Marinette said, running a hand through her tousled hair. Hardly the picture of sexy scrunched up on a couch while touching myself. I don't care if you're dignified, Adrien purred almost hungrily. I've already seen you dignified. Now I want to see you lose composure. She was losing composure already. Marinette clenched her teeth together, feebly trying to imagine that the fingers that were touching her were longer, thicker, and belonged to the voice on the other end of her earpiece. I want to see you sweat, Adrien continued, a noticeable rasp creeping into his voice. I want to feel you trembling underneath my fingertips as I take my time with you. Take your time, Marinette echoed, head tilting back into the cushions beneath it. She wanted to sit in his lap, one hand in her hair and one hand under the waistband of her underwear, whispering in her ear as she ground against his erection from behind. Do you really want to know what I want to do with you on Saturday? Why yes, she all but begged him, biting her lip as her fingers and hips slowly increased in pace. I want to unwrap you, Adrien almost sighed. Until every inch of you is exposed, inside and out. I want to touch you like you're touching yourself right now. Please, Marinette sighed, the couch squeaking and creaking underneath her as her butt ground into the cushions. She was going to have to steam clean the whole couch, but that was a problem for tomorrow's Marinette. I want to find out what it takes to make those sweet little noises come out of your mouth, Adrien said, now almost panting alongside her. I want to find out what kind of noises you make when I kiss you, when I leave little bite marks in places only I know about. Marinette whimpered, her free hand pinched her nipple, imagining Adrien's teeth clamping down on it, his wet tongue running over it and sucking on it until it was pink and sore. And do you know what I want most? Tell me. I want to watch you crawl, completely naked into my bed. Hey Adrien, I want to see that tight, cute little ass wiggle up onto my comforter, Adrien said as Marinette could already tell this unplanned excursion was coming to a head. I want to watch your fingers twist in my sheets as I climb in after you. I want to see your hair splayed out on my pillow and oh, fuck, Adrien. I'm Marinette's voice had gone up a pitch, breathy and almost incoherent. And I want to look you in the eye when I slide inside you for the first time. A flash of emerald green clouded her vision as something inside her snapped. The frustration she had felt all day had been building and building as they talked, only intensified by the soft purring in her ear and her fingers beneath the waistband of her underwear. She was glad she wasn't holding a phone because it would have slipped out of her grasp as she all but doubled over on herself, gasping as though she had been doused with ice water. Wave upon wave washed over her, reducing her to a mewling, moaning mess as she suddenly couldn't bring herself to care if she was being too loud or now. She didn't care, all she cared about was the image of Adrien looking down at her, teeth bared in a feral smirk as he slid himself inside her. She fell back against the couch, hair disheveled, eyes glassy, and chest rising and falling rapidly as she stared up at the ceiling. I think I felt that all the way over here, Adrien chuckled after a moment. Finished. Why yeah, Marinette said, glancing down at her completely soaked underwear with a shaky laugh. I in more ways than one. Ah, Adrien said, sounding like the cat that caught the canary. Why, so that's what you sound like. I'm usually much louder, Marinette said, hand resting across her forehead as she tugged the throw blanket over herself. You might have to gag me on Saturday. And miss out on a live performance. Adrien scoffed. Never. Someone might complain about the noise, Marinette said. If they don't, I'll not have done my job properly. Confident, are we? Marinette giggled. Optimistic at least, Adrien said. Are you good? Extremely, Marinette said. Thank you. My pleasure, Adrien said. Was it? Marinette asked. Did you? No, Adrien said. You needed that more than I did by the sound of things. True, Marinette sighed, almost disappointed that he hadn't played with himself too. Besides, I have a very good memory and the sound of you moaning in my ear will be more than enough inspiration for later. Gee, glad I could return the favor, Marinette said, lips twitching at the thought of Adrien touching himself while thinking of her. Need anything? Adrien said, I could always drop by foe. Thanks, but I think I'll wait until Saturday, Marinette said, slowly sitting up. I think we've had enough fun for one night. I was going to suggest bringing you some takeout or something, Adrien said as Marinette's face darkened a few shades. Oh, Marinette said, face-palming as Adrien snickered in her ear. Sorry. I'm flattered though, Adrien said. You'll be more than flattered if you show up here, Marinette said. Besides, you have some planning to do, don't you? I do, I just wanted to see if you needed anything first, Adrien said. Thank you, but I think I'm good for the night, Marinette said. If you're sure, Adrien said. I am, Marinette said. Well, thanks. Anytime, Adrien said. I guess I'll see you Saturday. Very much looking forward to it, Marinette said, bending over to pick up her blouse. I'll be in touch. Count on it, Adrien said. For a moment they waited for the other to hang up, nervous chuckles from both sides of the line. She had found her first foray into her new relationship with Adrien to be much easier than she had anticipated. And for the first time, she was feeling some of the anxiety start to lift. She expected the orgasm had something to do with that, but perhaps this wasn't going to be as intimidating as she thought it would be. Good night, Adrien, Marinette said. Good night, Princess Tilda. The call ended with a small beep as Marinette nearly tripped over her jeans, heart thudding in her ears as she balanced shakily on the arm of her chair. If she had any doubts about what it might be like to have Adrien call her princess, they were quickly dispelled. She bit her lip, barely suppressing a satisfied snicker as she felt a little gloating was in order. She thumbed through her contacts, pressing the send button and rummaging around in her desk for her spare clothes while the dial tone purred in her ear. Heyo, Alia's voice came across the other line. Hey, Marinette said. You busy? Nah, just chilling at Nino's and waiting for him to get back with the foe, Alia said. Sup? Not much, Marinette snickered. You sound happy about something, Alia said. Do I? Marinette said. Don't act like you didn't call to tell me some good news, Alia said. Spill. Well, Marinette said, crossing off another day on her calendar that brought her closer to Saturday. Adrien just told me to go fuck myself, and then he gave me some very specific instructions. Chapter end notes told you he was going to tell her to go fuck herself. https://www.youtube.com/watch V equals 6 ZXDO 4 deciliters 7 SU. I was going to write up a huge long passage about Hawkmoth rising from the grave and completely punking you guys with a fake chapter, but I decided to throw smut in there instead. Figured the swerve in the last chapter was enough of a dick move for now. First shot at prolonged smut in this story, and first smut that wasn't a dream sequence since wow relief duty. I think 3 months is the longest I've gone without writing genuine smut, so yeah, I guess I need the practice. I'm not going to detail Marinette's entire limit list because those suckers can get long and kind of weird, but for argument's sake, if they do it in this FIC, they consented to it. I'm not into non-con on any level, so any sexy times here will be 120% consensual. Super consensual. 2 in 1 week. I wanted to get this out early because I'm going to be spending the weekend watching sweaty, muscular men in spandex throw each other around a ring for at least 6 hours. Next time Aaliyah and Marinette shoot the breeze, Aaliyah Crane kicks a zebra in a fit of blue-balled Adrien frustration, and we arrive at Saturday at long, freaking, last. And then the true sin begins. Now if you'll excuse me, I have to make some pina coladas and prepare to watch Finn Balor's thighs. I need a minute to prepare for that. With the Silver Spoon chapter